Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So the first question I have is, why do parents, I'm assuming Arab parents, reject non-Arabs for marriage? So I was actually going to address this in my speech, so it's good you asked. What's it called? There's a lot of racism when it comes to marriage in our cultures, and it's very unfortunate. I'll give you an example. The other day I was talking to a brother, a Lebanese brother, and we were talking about marriage. And he said that he was talking to one of the people in his family, and they were talking about, would you allow your daughter to marry an African man? So she said, no, no way. He said, what if the African man is perfect, the most religious, the best akhlaq, he has money, he has everything. Anything you want, he has. Right? She says, no, because he doesn't speak Arabic. She says, okay, what if he speaks Arabic? No, because he has a different culture. She says, what if he was born and raised in Lebanon, has the exact same culture as you, born in your village, right? Has everything you want, everything you're desiring, only thing, his skin is a little darker. And she said, no, I wouldn't give my daughter, right? So, and this is a religious family, right? So you have people that have racism, and this actually hurts people who are not of the predominant Muslim races. So, for instance, one brother I know in the States, he was Burmese, and he was Sunni. He converted to Shia Islam, and he didn't even know that there were other Burmese Shia out there. So he thought he was the only Burmese Shia. And now I've come to Australia. We have a Sheikh from Burma, but you know, mashallah, they have him. But what's it called? He didn't know. So he was trying to get married and trying to get married and trying to get, and he was religious, he had a good job, everything that you'd want. He couldn't get married. For over 10 years he was trying to get married. He couldn't get married. He eventually married some sister, didn't wear hijab, and you know, compromised the most important criteria of marrying someone who's religious. So it is something that's really unfortunate, and the reason why they reject them is because of racism, in my opinion. And it's the only way to solve the issue is through education. And I don't have any hope to solve the issue with the older generation, but hopefully with the younger generation we can educate ourselves for the qualities that we should be looking for in a spouse, and race shouldn't be necessarily one of them. Sorry for taking too long.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Question says, is it wrong to put off marriage or moving out of home because you prefer to complete your educational studies? It is not recommended to delay marriage, but if you can secure yourself from committing haram or falling into haram, then there's no problem in doing so. So I'd like to give short answers, and I'll give the mic to Sayyid Mahdi.
أحسنت أحسنت بارك الله فيك. When a man is married, is he allowed to do mut'ah without the consent of the woman, as I've heard that they are? If so, isn't it a form of cheating? Well, according to Sayyid Sistani, and if I'm not mistaken, Sayyid al-Khoi, the husband cannot do mut'ah with a non-Muslim woman. So that's just stipulated, and in doing so, it prevents a lot of mut'ahs from happening. But that's Sayyid Sistani's view. He says without the consent of the wife, he's not permitted to do mut'ah, to marry another woman who is a non-Muslim. In other words, Christian or Jewish or Zoroastrian, because if she's anything else, then you're not allowed to marry her at all. According to Sayyid al-Khoi, if I'm not mistaken, he says that even with your wife's consent, you're not permitted to marry a non-Muslim woman. But if she's Muslim, well, the short answer is yes, the husband is permitted to marry another woman, whether permanently or temporarily, if she happens to be Muslim, in exactly the same way that a man is allowed to marry more than one wife. However, we do have a hadith where someone comes to Imam al-Sadiq and asks him if he's allowed to marry a woman on a temporary basis, even though he was married. And the Imam said to him, وَمَا تُرِيدُ بِهَا وَقَدْ أَغْنَاكَ اللَّهُ عَنْ ذَلِكَ. Allah has sufficed you. Allah has given you a wife, a permanent wife, and there really is no need to do mut'ah with a woman on a temporary basis. And I mean, if you can buy a house, why would you want to rent, right?
It's a specific question that someone has said to me. I'm wondering if my wife wrote this one. But says that you have spoken about the exception of money in marriage, but in some circumstances, some women don't expect anything but for the husband to be religious, loving, and respectful. How is it that some women give their everything to the man, but she's the last thing on his list and puts everyone before her? What is she to do? This is a very general question. But first and foremost, don't let his bad akhlaq ruin you. So if you're good, stay good. It doesn't matter what the people around you do. Don't let the environment destroy you. And eventually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow the truth to show. The other thing is you could actually talk about it with him and show him, look at the reality of the world. You're putting me before, you're putting your friends and family and everyone else before me. However, you look at them and they put their families before you. So how does that work, for example? But otherwise, don't let that destroy you or make you a bad person.
Bismillah. How does one, I'm going to actually cut this question short a little bit and only ask the top part of it, so whoever asked it, sorry about that. How does one feel about the idea of mut'ah being as a form of getting engaged instead of katib kitab? The only difference being is that mut'ah is not a written contract and therefore will not be counted as a divorce if split up. On the last part, the contract, as the Sayyid mentioned, between mut'ah and marriage is exactly the same, just there's one thing that's inserted into the mut'ah contract, which is the what's called the time period, so the expiration date. And also, yes, it wouldn't be a divorce after they split up. Now, the main part of the question, though, I don't think it's a substitute, no. I don't think it's a good idea to make that as a substitute, but I'm not opposed to having a mut'ah in order to get to know the person with conditions of no intimacy and also being very short, very, very short. But as like a Western form of engagement for 6 months or something like that, no way. I don't think that's a good idea. Okay.
Bismillah. If parents interfere in our marriage life, what can we do about that? Well, for your parents to interfere, it means that they felt there's something wrong happening in your life. Either you told them, or they felt that there's something wrong. The way to solve this is not to give them a chance to interfere in your marriage life. If you have a problem with your partner, try to solve it inside the house. Solve all your problems together, secretly. And if you want to go and meet your parents or his parents, don't open the topic in front of them. Especially for our sisters, you don't have to go and tell your mother everything that happens in your life. Not everything you do, you tell your mother about. Some wives, the moment they wake up in the morning, they call their mother and they keep talking for the rest of the day and inform her about everything that happens. Anything? All right. So that's wrong. To solve the problem, don't give them a chance to interfere in your life. Trust me, if you want to continue in your marriage life, don't tell your parents what's happening in your life unless there's something danger happening and you find that it is important to inform them. But the minor problems, try to solve them together, or even to speak to a qualified person like our respected scholars around me. And one of our scholars is studying psychology, so you can contact him and he can help you out in this, inshallah.
There are quite a number of questions which revolve around the same theme, and that is, what do you do if your parents want you to marry someone and you don't want to marry them. And it's a pretty recurrent problem that we have in the community. And of course, there's this major stigma where people think that Muslims engage in forced marriages and women are forced into marrying people that they don't want to, who are 50 years senior, and so on and so forth. And again, that may be the case in some cases, but again, Islamically speaking, here's something that's quite interesting. It is the woman who initiates the marriage contract. It's not even the man. And so your consent is absolutely crucial. Without your consent, the whole contract is invalid. It falls apart. And so if your parents want you to marry someone that you don't want, then you always have the option of saying no. At the same time, I would counsel some flexibility in the sense that, generally speaking, parents want what's best for their children. I'm not saying that there are parents out there who want to please some distant cousin who happens to live in the villages back home, and they put their interest ahead of their children. But generally speaking, they want what's best for you. And if there is someone that they suggest, then give that suggestion a chance. Don't rule it out simply because that person is coming from overseas, because I noticed that issue coming up in some of the questions. Just because they're coming from overseas does not make them a bad person. Yes, there might be a bit of a cultural clash, there might be some language barriers and all that, I agree, but ultimately, your priorities have to be set right. What are your priorities? If you're looking for someone who is religious, someone who's caring, someone who's compassionate, someone who's going to look after you, as the Prophet says, زَوِّجْهَا تَقِي فَإِنْ أَحَبَّهَا أَكْرَمَهَا وَإِنْ أَبْغَضَهَا لَمْ يَظْلِمْهَا. Marry her to someone who's pious, for if he loves her, he will take good care of her, and if he, for some reason, there are irreconcilable problems, then he will not oppress her because his piety will prevent him from doing so. If that is your priority, then really it doesn't matter where the person's coming from, whether it's overseas or local. You could get married to someone local and he could turn out to be, a vicious monster. And so give that suggestion a chance, but ultimately the consent is yours, and without it, no contract is valid. Sheikh would like to add something, please. No? Oh. Okay. So Samahat al-Sheikh says that there appears to be a stigma in the community here that if you marry someone from overseas, it's seen as a negative thing. That, oh, you're going off back to Lebanon or Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan to marry someone from over there, then you're not really, up there. And of course, it really doesn't matter what other people say. At the end of the day, this is someone that you will share the rest of your life with, or that's really what the hope is. And you're going to be intimate with this person, you're going to have children with them, you're going to grow a family with them. And so how people view that is really irrelevant. And I would not heed any of those comments, negative or positive. Just do what you know is right as per the scriptures, as per the traditions of the Prophet and the Imams, and go with your heart. If you know that this person seems like Mr. Right, as they say, marry them. And if you can't find Mr. Right, well, go for Mr. Left and drag the idiot over to the right side and then marry him.
Ahsantum Sayyidina. I think the next question, I've got a couple of questions that are similar to this. Can you please explain the difference between the rights of a wife and a mother? And what can a girl do if her mother-in-law is getting involved in a marriage and it's leading to her husband treating her unjustly? And I live with my in-laws. What are my responsibilities with them? How should I go towards them according to our religion? I think Sheikh Nami, he gave a very valid point, a very important point. And that important point is that generally these little problems, keep them between you and your wife. Or, don't go and tell your parents, because I'll tell you now, if someone hurts my little girl, I want his blood. There's not Allah saying, this is the reality. That's true. This is the way you feel about it. This is how a parent feels. And this is why the last thing you want is someone coming back to a parent, because the husband and wife may forgive each other. Say a word of disrespect, you'll be forgiven. You said the wrong things, you hurt my feelings, you hurt your feelings, you'll forgive each other. But you go and tell the parents, it's another story. Now you've escalated the whole thing. Especially when you go yourself and you say, oh, you know, mum, dad, this is what, you know, my husband did to me, or the wife, you know, vice versa. This is, the husband says, you know, this is what my wife did to me. You will breed this hatred. And so as Sheikh, he put a very valid point. But the other one travels around the wife and the mother or the in-laws. There's one simple answer that really covers everything. And before I get to that simple answer, mother and the wife are two different things. And obviously, your mother is on top of your head all of the time. She's the #1 priority. However, pleasing your mother doesn't mean you have to oppress your wife. And pleasing your wife doesn't mean you have to oppress your mother. Because you know which buttons to press to do that, and you know how to weave around it. And this is what you have to do. You have to weave around it. Certain things your mother doesn't need to know about your wife. And there's certain things your wife doesn't need to know about your mother. Simple as that. And you can please this one by not upsetting the other one, and please the other one by not upsetting this one. But the final thing I'd like to say, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Qiyamah, He says, يُنَبَّأُ الْإِنسَانُ يَوْمَئِذٍ بِمَا قَدَّمَ وَأَخَّرَ بَلِ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the Day of Judgment that you'll be told about what you have brought forth, your good deeds and your bad deeds, and then almost as if it's an afterthought, and it's very deliberate because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have afterthoughts, but He says, nay, بَلْ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا, that the human being knows exactly what it is. And this is it. There's a Chinese proverb that says the mother-in-law, the daughter-in-law becomes a mother-in-law. You know, the kinni becomes a hammer, as they say. But in Chinese, I don't know how to say that. But the point is, this Chinese proverb leads to you, to telling us that basically you know yourself, if I am a mother-in-law, how do I want to be treated? And that's how the daughter-in-law should treat her mother-in-law. And as a mother-in-law, you say, if that was my daughter going to a new house, how do I want her treated? And that's how you treat her. But that's the most difficult thing. And this is why Allah says, nay, bal al-insana ala nafsihi basira. You know full well. Well, I'll tell you on the Day of Judgment, but you know it. You know full well. And this is the same thing. We know full well. This is the way you have to treat your in-laws. This is the way you have to treat your daughter and son-in-laws. As if it was me, how would I want them treated? And you notice everything changes. Even when someone comes and tells you a marital problem, my son is the best, he's so good, but his wife, oh, his wife is this, and then you say, imagine his wife was your daughter. All of a sudden they stop, they pause. If that was my daughter, hold on, no, it's a different story. You know, it's not very nice that she has to do this and that for him. It's not very nice that he can shout at her, for example. Everything changes. This is the way you have to look at it. This is the key and the core to these sort of complex solutions of mother and wife, mother-in-law, father-in-law. Thank you.
Another one. What do you think about a man who intends to marry a woman, but only after getting to know each other through temporary marriage for some time? So again, similar to what I said, I'm not against a short temporary marriage where the families are involved and the couple can talk to each other comfortably without worrying about, crossing any boundaries, with the condition of no intimacy, of course, where the brother can see the sister without hijab, for instance. I know a few scholars who we all respect who have actually done that. But if it's the brother who, secretly, without the families, is trying to convince you to do a temporary marriage in order to marry you permanently, I'd be careful with that. And a lot of times they try to trick you.
Son, if you marry a person who is not close to Allah Azza wa Jal, and you are struggling with them, how can you bring them close to Allah? Well, it's a bit too late after you get married to someone to change him. There's a problem from the beginning. When you search for your partner, you should look for a religious partner. That's the first criteria that you have to put. Religion, to look at his religion. Of course, the looks are important, just to keep that in mind. When you wake up in the morning, you're not going to recite Quran, you're going to look at their face. But also religion is important. To have the idea of changing your partner after you get married, I'll tell you it doesn't work. It's hard to change yourself. Okay? How many times you say, I want to wake up, for example, and pray Salatul Layl, or I'm going to recite Dua Tawassul every Tuesday night, and so on. You find it hard to change your own self. How about changing others? So from the beginning, you have to look for a religious partner. It's a bit late, but you have to try. Try in different ways. If you can't, ask some qualified people to help you out in this. But don't push him into religion. Yeah? Don't push him too much. Try to be smart in the way you present religion to him. Try to be smart in educating him about the religion. Muwaffaqin.
Many women feel helpless when mut'ah is practiced by their husbands. My question is, where is the line drawn between cheating and halal relations? But look, I don't want to place the burden on you, the wife, the one asking the question. But I think the question you need to ask is, what is it that he's missing in this relationship? Again, I'm not blaming the women, and I'm not getting the guys off the hook. But again, it helps to try and look at the roots of the problem. What is he missing? What is he looking for by going after other women? I mean, surely as his wife, as in many cases the mother of his children, as his soulmate, as someone that he chose to be his soulmate, chose to be his partner for life, surely he cares for you. Surely he loves you. But what is it that's gone missing? And if, as I said earlier, if husbands fulfill their obligations and wives fulfill their obligations, I don't see any reason why someone would want to look outside the institution of their permanent marriage. Someone would want to look outside for other women and what have you. There's a reason why the hadith says that people who are married in this world and who are both believers, in paradise, they get to choose to be married to the same spouse that they had in this world. I can't think of any single reason why someone would want to do that, but if you did want that as an option, it's available. And to be married in paradise, the hadith even goes into detail as to how that relationship can be fostered and can be given a boost in paradise. And the Imam says that your wife in this world can be your wife in paradise, and she'll be more beautiful, more glamorous, more majestic than 70 damsels and huris. It's a very strong bond. The question I want to ask again is, what is he missing? Why is he going outside? I would want, again, not without blaming you or saying that you're responsible for this, I would want to compensate for whatever he's missing outside within the marriage and keep him in there for his sake.
Just a quick one that says if you do mut'ah and you fall pregnant, but you don't want no one to know. So I don't think any of the men are falling pregnant, but are you allowed to have an abortion? Now the whole issue is, mut'ah is used very loosely here, if forgive the pun, if we're talking about a virgin and she hasn't obviously sought permission of her guardian or father, or even a non-virgin for that matter that's not independent. So the answer is no, you are not allowed to have an abortion.
Why can men get married to the people of the book, but women can only get married to a Muslim? So permanent marriage, both men and women can only marry Muslims. Temporary marriage, a man is allowed to marry a person of the book with certain conditions. So, so my topic is permanent marriage. They can't, so that's fine. And maybe Sayyid will answer his topic about temporary marriage.
All right. Is it Islamically wrong? Actually, it says, is it Islamically correct to take an istikhara for marriage purpose? Istikhara usually is done when you can't reach a conclusion. When you can't find an answer, then you seek an istikhara. I personally don't recommend someone to use the istikhara for the purpose of marriage. It is better to search and investigate and ask and sit down and speak with your partner or with the one you're planning to marry before you do any istikhara. But if you can't reach a conclusion, or if you stay lost after searching, then there's no problem to perform it. However, it is better not to. No, if people use it as an excuse, maybe, all right, you go and you ask for the hands of someone, and the parents, they say, we did istikhara, and it was wrong, or it wasn't good. Maybe they are trying to be good, they're trying to be nice. So they don't want to say, well, we don't accept you, the istikhara. Anyway, but it's wrong. It's wrong. That's lying at the end. It's lying. They are lying. So, and people shouldn't lie. Or Muslims shouldn't lie. Just try to be honest and consult with others, and especially with the qualified people, before thinking about istikhara. Not only in marriage, in anything you want to do in life. Some people, they wake up in the morning and they don't know what to have for breakfast, they do istikhara. Should we have cheese or something else? That's wrong. The place for istikhara is when you can't find an answer for what you are looking for.
Okay. Does any marja allow mut'a for girls who are virgin without knowledge of their father? Isn't the wording of that question interesting? Any marja? Is there anybody out there that I can refer to so I can follow? I don't care if he's knowledgeable, as long as he lets me do this one thing. Clearly there's a problem there. Brothers, right? Because I assume it's one of the brothers who asked this question. The short answer is no. There's a reason why you need the father's or the guardian's consent. And I say guardian because it has to be either the father or the paternal grandfather, whose authority actually encompasses that of the father. There's a reason for that. If somebody came and just asked your daughter for some coffee, but really what he wants is to sleep with her. I mean, that's what dates are all about. That's what proms are all about. That's what Western culture is based on. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking, they always stigmatize Islam as being, as forcing women to marry people that, in spite of their wishes. And yet, look at proms. I mean, you're forced to go to your prom. I mean, I don't know how prevalent it is in Australian culture, but in America, you have to do it. If you don't, you're stigmatized and you're demonized and you're just not a sociable person. You have to do it. You have to go in knowing that there's a very strong likelihood that at the end of that night, you will become intimate with your date. I mean, isn't that a form of forced intimacy? Moving on. So, there's a reason why you need your parents, your father's consent. Because there's a huge difference between the guy who takes your daughter out for coffee and ends up sleeping with her, and someone who has to come and look your father in the eye and say that I wish to marry your daughter, whether permanently or temporarily, and I wish to look after her, take care of her, under God. Big difference. There's a big difference. So, the short answer is no, there is no marja out there who allows this. However, there are exceptions to the rule. And one of the exceptions is if you have a father who is so stubborn and strong-headed to the point that he does not want you to get married in principle. So he has a problem with you getting married, for instance, for bogus reasons. I'm not going to give examples. For bogus reasons. Indefensible reasons that make no sense Islamically. If you have a father like that, and you feel that you must get married to fulfill your religious obligations or because you can't stay away from haram, then you may refer to a scholar, to a alim, who can take away your father's authority over you. So that is an exception in some circumstances that may be available to those people who find themselves under those circumstances.
Salam. If a man approaches a woman and he is very good in many aspects, are you obliged to accept him even though you just don't feel comfortable, even after trying? It's a very good question. That obviously the hadith says, "Man tardawna dinahu wa khuluq," that whoever you're pleased with his religion and his disposition, and his akhlaq, so to speak, then marry him. And if you don't, وَإِلَّا فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ, that's a fitna in the land, that you've caused dissension and you've caused a massive mischief in the land by avoiding this. However, if you just don't feel comfortable, is it for certain reasons? Is it, for example, someone's told you, oh, this person's poor, or you showed, you put his picture on Facebook, or you private messaged it on Snapchat, and all the girls said, oh, he looks so ugly, or vice versa. All the guys said, oh, she's fat, or whatever. The point of the matter is, if that's the reason, then you really have to look at, does their opinion matter? But if you actually have the gut feeling, the gut feeling when you meet someone, so I don't like the cut of his jib, so to speak, that it just doesn't feel right, then yeah, go with the gut feeling. Gut feeling is good. Doesn't feel right, walk away from it. That's probably the better option. But if there's an underlying cause, somebody telling you something like that, commenting on the spouse to be, then no, I think you should reject that. But gut feelings, always good. Oh, I just had an addition to the question. What if you're not attracted to the person? Attracted to, what does that mean? This is, attracted to the person as in, you have to look at what is that, what does it mean by not attracted? Not physically attracted, for example. Physical attraction, honestly, it's not a huge thing in reality. I mean, the truth of it is, a wise man once told me that even the most beautiful woman won't be as beautiful after 10 days. So the point of the matter is, if you're going to get married, eventually you're going to get used to that beauty, without a doubt. And especially if you compare it to other beauties, well, eventually there's going to be bigger and better. Like I said, your biggest commodity is your youth. And the beauty of youth is slowly going to go away. And you can try and hold it back and reverse it. It doesn't work. You're never going to be able to keep that beauty. So that attraction, if it's physical, it's, if you're looking at physical attraction, this is negative. However, if the attraction is in, you're not attracted to the personality of the person or the disposition of the person, is another story. And that's rarely ever the matter. So if that, you just don't like the guy's attitude or the girl's attitude or the way she speaks, the way she talks, street talk or whatever it is, then yeah, maybe this may be a reason that you would get away. This would fall under khuluq. Otherwise, we've taken too long answering this question. Otherwise, yeah, if bad gut feeling, walk away. Other than that, if it's an underlying issue, try and solve it, because you never know. You may never get a good suitor, or you may never get another suitor again. And it's the same thing, vice versa. Thank you.
What is the process of getting married? For example, let's say you think you found the right person. Can you start talking to her straight away? Or do you have to go to the parents and so on? Can you go out? So just talking in and of itself is not haram, but it's very dangerous because it's very easy to cross lines, and especially with someone that you're attracted to, someone who you think is the right person that you want to marry. So when you talk to her, it's very difficult to control yourself and control the conversation and make sure nothing haram goes on. So I would definitely suggest going through the families and doing it that way. So for instance, with me, my wife was introduced to me through a family friend, and I met her, I liked her, so I went to her house, knocked on her door, her father answered, I said, I want to marry your daughter. And then we started from there, and that's how we got to know each other. So you have to, definitely through the parents. That's what I would say.
Can a husband force his wife to wear a niqab or a chador? Of course, the husband can't force his wife. It is something that they have to agree on before the marriage. But after they get married, he can't force her to wear the niqab unless both of them follow a marja' who says that it is, for example, ihtiyat wujubi, obligatory precaution to cover the face for a woman. Then, if she doesn't want to return back to another marja' and she keeps following that marja', he can force her to do so. But if they follow a marja' who doesn't say that it is wajib or ihtiyat wujubi to cover, or to cover the face and so on, then he can't force her to do so. A smart or a wise husband can encourage his wife. And this is something that is good to encourage your wives to do. Unfortunately, we have some people in the community who attack those who cover their faces. They call them by names, calling them ISIS or Wahhabis or what else, what other names? Ninjas or mailbox, that's another we have heard. This is something you're disrespecting the rulings of Allah Azza wa Jal by doing so. And those who think that we should try to look good in front of others, and especially non-Muslims, that's how they think. Let them think about Allah Azza wa Jal first and the way we look in front of Allah. Before you attack the niqab or the covering the face, remember that this is the dress code of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. This is the dress code of Sayyidatu Nisa al-Alamina Fatima alayha salam. This is the dress code of Sayyida Zainab alayha salam. Right? So yes, the husband can't force his wife to do so. He can encourage her, and we should encourage our sisters to cover their faces bi barakat as-salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I didn't get a loud salawat for this, so I'm sure most of you are disagreeing with me, but thank you very much.
All right. If you have taken istikhara before going to the girl's house and it was positive, however, once you have gone through with it, the really bad handwriting, guys, come on. Then the girl's father places a high dowry and tough conditions. Should you go through with it or not? Well, look, istikhara isn't a divine revelation at the end of the day. It's a means of resolving some conflict that you might have if you're conflicted about something, if you've exhausted all other avenues to learn about the individual, and then you're still conflicted, you're still unsure, you take istikhara to give you that spiritual nudge in the right direction. And istikhara can be absolutely good, but again, as the esteemed Sheikh Nami mentioned, it isn't something that you must base your decision entirely on, right? You could start with istikhara, you could end with istikhara, but at the end of the day, it's not something that gives you divine revelation. And so it's not like you've been commanded to take one route as opposed to the other. It's just a really good way to resolve those conflicts, as I said. And so if you come to the point where it seems that this isn't working, or that the conditions are too tough, or that the dowry is too high, or some other ridiculous condition has presented itself, feel free to walk away without any sort of guilt.
This sort of touches on the topic that I spoke about, but what is your view on the following statement? Today's female youth feel they need to dress style themselves and wear fashionable hijabs because it is a supply and demand issue. And women are dressing the way they think men want them to. Most guys these days go for the fashionable hijab. Again, you know, this statement, you're speaking about women like a commodity, you know, supply and demand. that they wear this hijab because this is the only way they'll attract men. And you will attract men, without a doubt, but not the men that you want. This is the reality. You might attract the man that you think you want, but again, it was like the example of the, McDonald's or the fine dining. So you dress up like that, you're going to dress up the fast food sort of guy. The guy that doesn't want to be with you all the time. Yeah, he'll be attracted, but he wants to show you your photo to his friends and look at the way she dresses. This is the issue, my brothers and sisters, sometimes we take this life as a joke, but everything we do has consequences. If I dress in a certain way and attract a certain type of individual, then I've closed off a whole area, or if we want to call it supply and demand, a market. I've closed away a market that I actually want. Like, I want these sorts of men to come and ask for my hand as a female, and you want these sorts of men, but they won't come. Do you know why? Because your hijab is too fashionable. That's not what they look like. It's like those individuals, some of the brothers, that come up and they say, oh, there's no good girls anymore, there's no good girls. Brother, where are you looking? Oh, it's in so-and-so club, there's no good girls. You want to find good girls, firstly, become a human being yourself, and then inshallah, then you will be guided. If you think about it, I'll tell you something. The way you dress, you will already limit half of the bucket cases. All right, they won't even come knock on your door. Do you know why? If you dress in a proper Islamic fashion, as His Eminence Sheikh Nami was speaking about, in an esteemed fashion, you will get esteemable gentlemen knocking at your door. The others won't dare. They won't even dare come near your house. However, if you dress fashionable, and your hijab's all fashionable, and your body's already shaped out, you will attract the sort of men that will make your father want to buy a shotgun. And these are the sort of men that will come knocking at your door. And eventually you'll end up with that sort of a man. Is that what you want? Maybe he's good looking. Maybe he's got a square jaw. Maybe he's got a muscular body. But is this what you want to live with for the rest of your life? And then you have to deal with that? وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So it's not about supply and demand. At the end of the day, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Whoever is pious and fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find him a way. Too many stories on this issue, but there's not enough time so we can get a lot of the questions answered. However, I hope that is sufficient to eliminate this monetary view or tangible view of supply and demand.
It was mentioned that we should not look for spouses from non-righteous lineage or from bad backgrounds, and in parentheses, gutters. I guess that's the Australian word for thug, is that right? Yeah, but a person being a gutter. Yeah, bad person. Anyways, we have many examples of our imams marrying women from non-Arab and non-Muslim lineage, and some from royal families who undeniably would have had alcohol and haram in their lives. Please clarify this. So in Islam, one of the qualities that we're supposed to look for in a spouse, as the Sheikh mentioned, is that we should look for a spouse from a good family. And there's plenty of reasons for this. Obviously, someone raised in a good family, the chances of them being good themselves is much higher than someone raised in a bad family that's committing sin and, doing all kinds of terrible things. But there are cases, there are exceptions to this rule, right? I remember, like myself, alhamdulillah, I got married, so at least one family didn't look at that way. But I remember I was at a gathering similar to this, and it was a question and answer session, and there was a scholar next to me, and the question posed to him was, is it okay or permissible to marry a convert? And he said, no, you shouldn't. And I said, man, I'm never getting married. I'm out of luck here. But alhamdulillah, I got lucky. I guess I got lucky. Now, I'm not saying I'm an exception. My wife probably got the bad end of the stick there. But there's plenty of cases, for instance, the ones that the imams married, where there is someone who is exceptional, someone who's very religious, very good, even though they were raised in a family that's not religious, right? And in these cases, when you marry them, there will be difficulties that you will have in life, and you'll have to accept these difficulties. So when you have to interact with their family, it's not going to be easy. And there's going to be things that will be difficult, but being religious is the most important thing. So if the person has, religiosity, has akhlaq, and is exceptional, then I would pay attention. But if it's just a normal Muslim from a very bad family, then I would try to look for someone from a better family. That's my opinion.
What's the difference between urfi, misyar, and mut'ah? Good question. Mut'ah is enshrined in the Quran, and misyar and urfi and the dozens of other labels that have come about in the last 10, 15 years or so, primarily in Saudi Arabia and Egypt, are innovations, plain and clear. I mean, those are the people who always go about talking about the Shia being innovators and, coming up with acts of worship that were not practiced by the Imam, by the Prophet, and so on and so forth. Well, these are innovations, clear and simple. They're nowhere to be found in the Quran or the traditions of the Prophet or even the traditions of the so-called righteous companions, but mut'ah is. So there's a big difference there.
This is a bit of a long one. It's a three-part question. So inshallah, I'll try and keep it concise. And it's basically, do you recommend Facebook? Do you recommend Facebook as a possible platform in initially finding a spouse, number one? Number two, what are the restrictions regarding an unmarried boy and an unmarried girl speaking to each other on Facebook? Number three, when can you tell a girl you like her and want to get married? So inshallah, I'll try and put it all into one question. That obviously, personally, I don't recommend it as a platform. However, it's a reality that it is a platform where people get to meet each other and learn about each other, and maybe it's not such a bad thing in this day and age. However, unmarried boy, unmarried girl, you have to be very careful about what you speak about, especially considering mufakaha, which is basically for you to flirt or to speak anything with a sexual connotation. And sometimes, in this day and age, you could say the most normal thing. However, the culture is hypersexualized, and therefore even the most mundane thing can be placed into a sexual context. So the issue is you have to be very careful when you're speaking if you're getting to know somebody, and it has to be very limited. Now, especially for the sisters. Because with the sisters, you're giving a piece of yourself that is not, for you you shouldn't place it out there as public knowledge for everyone. I mean, this is part of your personality. This should be for the people that are halal on you, the one that you're going to marry. Other men aren't worthy of it to sit there and learn about everything that's within you and ask you any question they want and hear your opinion on this and that. That's none of their business. That's the reality. And so, obviously, again, we go back to the principle of think about it yourself. If my daughter, for example, or my sister was on Facebook, what would I like the extent of the conversation to be? And when would I like this guy to come and knock on my door, for example, or knock on the father's door or your house and say, look, I want to get to know your daughter further, I want your blessing, I want to marry your daughter, for example. And these things are important. These things are very important. Don't give away too much, or as I usually like to say, get married before you know too much about each other, then you won't stand each other. But, thank you.
Is God displeased with those who delay intentionally the creation of offspring for a year or so through contraceptive methods, for example, the pill? No, there's no problem in doing that, and you could plan when to have children. Of course, it's highly encouraged to have children, but if there's a reason why you want to delay it for a year or so, there's absolutely no problem.
Answer this one, Sheikh. All right. So, what do you do when you are getting to know a girl and her father lets her sleep outside the house and lets her go to parties, and when you advise her, she says, none of your business. Walk away. How hard could that be? Just drop the mic and walk the hell away and look elsewhere. There's a beautiful flower, I'm sure you've seen it, that grows in swamps. And the flower looks absolutely mesmerizing. There's no doubt about that. But the problem is, to get to it, you have to go through the swamp. You have to get down and dirty. The Prophet has a beautiful hadith in which he refers to this specific flower and says, إِيَّاكُمْ وَخَضْرَاءِ الدِّمَنِ. Beware of something he calls خَضْرَاء الدِّمَنِ, which is a technical term for that flower. So they ask him, وَمَا خَضْرَاءُ الدِّمَنِ? What is this plant that you refer to? The Prophet said, إِمْرَأَةٌ حَسْنَاء فِي مَنْبَتِ سُوءٍ. A beautiful, attractive woman who happens to reside in a corrupt environment. If she happens to be in a corrupt environment where, I mean, you're getting to know her for the purpose, for the express purpose of marriage, and she's already going out to parties and sleeping outside and doing God knows what, walk away. I don't care how attracted you are. I don't care how much you happen to quote-unquote love her. Walk away. Find someone who's going to be a mother to your children. That's a really good example to illustrate when you're shopping around for a spouse is this. When you see a beautiful painting, right? It's not the painting that should attract you. It's the painter. It's the artist behind the painting, right? You're looking for someone who's going to fill a huge void in your life. Someone who is going to give you what the Quran refers to as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, she gives you, أَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُمْ وَهُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ. She provides you with clothing. She provides you with not physical clothing, but essentially she gives you that sense of security, that sense of connection that you cannot find in de facto relationships. You can never find that sense of deep connection in a boyfriend-girlfriend situation. Never, ever. I remember there was an episode on the Colbert Report, if you've seen it, it's an American talk show, and someone came on the show, so Stephen Colbert asked him, he said to him, I hear you're married. And he said, yeah, you know, I'm married now. He said, so what's changed? What's different? He said, well, when I wake up in the morning, she's not missing anymore, right? So that sense of insecurity that comes with de facto relationships is no longer gone. That is what you find in marriage. And to achieve that, you need to find the right person. Someone who's going to stick around, someone who's going to give you that security, not someone who goes to parties from day one.
What are the consequences of a man who ruins a girl's reputation after he has got to know her? This is absolutely terrible. If, you know, in the real world, I'll just give you a small example. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds you accountable for every action, He says in the Holy Quran. So on the Day of Judgment, do you know, even if you see a random girl walking in the street, you don't know who she is. A person that's walking, and you call her or you accuse her of that act. So you say, you know, what a licentious girl. But in street talk, you know, that girl is a licentious girl. On the Day of Judgment, she has the right to ask, do you have evidence of me being licentious? And if you can't prove it, then you bear the burden of that crime or of that sin. Something as small as that. Imagine. And, you know, obviously on these days with the internet and social media, many people, they'll just, you know, write all sorts of things, write whatever they want, swear about random people, accuse random people of anything. Wal-'iyadhu billah. And you accuse these people. Can you sit there and have a basis for these statements? So imagine if that's what we're talking about, a random girl. It doesn't say if she's Muslim or she's not Muslim or whatever she is. Let's go back and look at, imagine getting to know a girl who is a Muslim, who is a family girl, and you find out everything about her, and then you go and spread it out and you destroy her reputation. Wal-'iyadhu billah. The consequences would be absolutely dire. Other than the punishment you'd receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you would need to seek forgiveness from her before you're cleansed of that sin. Wal-'iyadhu billah.
This is my last one. What do you suggest for the married man and woman who desire to conceive? On every occasion we have followed specific amal with the hope of conceiving rightly guided children, but have not yet been successful. nor are there any medical issues. I fear losing patience, blaming myself, not coping with social pressures, and or trying to conceive without doing a'mal and planning as other people have suggested. So a couple things. First of all, you don't blame yourself, right? It's not your fault, and patience is a virtue. Try to remain patient. There are many cases where without any medical issues, it takes time. It could take up to a few years without any problems at all. So I don't know how long this has been happening, but if it's been less than that, then there's still no room for worry or anything. If it is longer than that, you've mentioned that there's no medical issues, but if hopefully that means you've went to a doctor and got it checked out. If you haven't, then I would suggest doing that. Thirdly, the amal you're doing is very good, and continue to do that. And you should be pleased with, you're doing the amal, you're serving Allah, you're worshiping Him through this action, which will have many rewards, even if Allah doesn't decide to grant you a child. So be pleased if you're able to bear that calamity, and be pleased with what Allah has decided to bless you with, or refrain from giving you, then you'll only increase in rewards and maqam and spirituality. If there are other specifics of this question, I don't know who asked it, but feel free to come up to me later and we could talk about it further.
If I may just add one point to what His Eminence, the Sheikh, mentioned about not being able to conceive. We have traditions specifically from our 8th Imam, Imam al-Ridha alayhi salatu wassalam, whom, as some of you might know, the Imam didn't have a child for a long time, and that actually led to some groups splitting from the Shia faith on the basis that, well, we have 12 Imams, our 8th Imam has not conceived any children, so that doesn't make any sense. So that was a test, right? That was a test from Allah to see how much patience people had and how much conviction they held in their hearts. So the Imam has some instructions that he provides, some a'mal that he gives. For instance, he says one of the things you should do is recite istighfar. So on a constant basis, astaghfirullah rabbi wa atubu ilayh, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. There's another hadith where the Imam stipulates 70 istighfars in the mornings and 70 istighfars every evenings, and he says that you will be granted children. Another hadith by Imam Ridha once again says that you should recite the adhan in a loud manner when you're at home. So when the time of adhan comes, when the time of prayer is declared, you recite the adhan yourself, and you do so in a loud manner inside your home as to declare the beginning of time for salah. And we have a hadith about that as well. Finally, this question that I have is, if a man leaves you with no reason on why he's divorcing you, what does Islam say about this? At the end of the day, you are held responsible for your actions. And if your actions involve any act of oppression against someone that you took in, as the Prophet says, أَخَذْتُمُوهُنَّ بِأَمَانَاتِ اللَّهِ, you're marrying this woman and you're taking her as a trust from God, that you then have to fulfill that trust. You have to return this trust upon death back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a form that she would have grown, she would have developed in your care, right? So if there is any act of oppression taking place, and this can be a very traumatizing event, if a woman gets divorced without even knowing the reason, I mean, if that isn't oppression, I don't know what is. And so you are held responsible for that. And what I would suggest is you take that into account, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, right? Someone came to Imam al-Sadiq, he said to him, I wish the killers of Imam Hussein were still around so that we could avenge the death of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. The Imam said to him, أَوَتَسْتَقِلُّ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ, do you take the punishment of God lightly? You can never punish them better or more appropriately than God can, right? So leave it to Allah. There was a woman in our family who was divorced. And subhanallah, I mean, imagine how much backbiting and slander takes place when a divorce is about to go down, right? Because it's a very difficult, painful situation for everybody. And yet, she never allowed anybody in and outside the family to slander her ex-husband. If anybody ever opened their mouth to slander him, she'd say, ghiba is haram. I'm not gonna take from his sins on the day of judgment on the basis that I have oppressed him or I have slandered him. If he has oppressed me, Allah will be the best of judges. Ahsant.
And this last question, are there any matchmaking services being organized by Al-Jaafaria Council? Somebody. The best way really is, family and friends. At the end of the day, this is the best way. Family and friends, people that you know, your mother, your aunties, uncles, whatever, they can recommend, and they know people, It's just like you know people now. Tomorrow they'll be different people, but you'll still remember how they were. So when your children ask you about these people, you'll know what to say. Sometimes you say, I'm friends with so-and-so, and your father's like, keep away from him. And you don't know why. But it's because your father knows his father and his grandfather. He knows exactly where this is heading, where you're going to end up by hanging around these sorts of people. It's the same thing when looking for marriage. However, I think something might be started up. If anyone's interested in getting more information, they can speak to Haj Ali Al-Mawi. Possibly. And he should be able to provide you with information about this.
He's searching himself for a while.
It's interesting. Conflict of interest. Anyway, so fine.
Anyone is interested, ask now.
Inshallah. If anyone, the other thing is, if anyone's interested, honestly, you should be talking to these eminent ulama, these mashayikh that we have, because they know people and they can really help you, put you in touch with the right people, because people come to them and give their problems.
Let's have him on stage, maybe. No?
We're done. This is the end. Thank you for attending, and I think they'll give you the rest of that message. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi.
All right, just the last thing for the night. We do have 2 gifts to give away. We're going to give the female gift to the male. Sorry, the female gift to the men, and then inshallah the man can give that to his wife or future potential, and the other way around. So if you get the gift, if the male will get a ring, which is for a female, and the female will get a man's watch, which is for a male, and then inshallah you can hand out the gift to a potential and or whatever you would like to do with it. So we'll just pull it out, and then inshallah we've prepared food for you guys. It will be up the back when you leave. Please do take some with you. We have prepared a large amount, though obviously not the turnout wasn't what we expected. We don't know why, but anyway, I'll pull it out now, and then inshallah you have enough time to go home and pray and do what you need to do. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Alright, I'll pull out the women's one first. So that, remember, again, the lady will get the men's watch to give to a male, and the men will get the ring to give to a female. Alright, for the female, she'll be getting the men's watch. It goes to Hajj Zainab Mehdi. 04511361717. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sorry, just because there's more than one, that's why. All right, and the last one. I believe it's a I'm not sure if they've missed out a letter, but it's Hassan Nasur. Is there a Hassan Nasur?